Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Pitchside Podcast. I'm your host, the HOD of the BSB. Like, share as usual, subscribe to the channel, of course, enable notifications to receive all the updates from this podcast and the other content on the channel. Follow us on social media. I'm at PSP on Twitter, Pitchside Pod on Instagram. Listen to the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you can get it from, and catch it later on at www.webreathesports.com. And let's kick things off, of course, with a news roundup of the most important headlines of what happened in the footballing world in the last 24 hours. And we start from England, where Derby County have officially appointed Wayne Rooney as the new manager for the club, as a permanent manager for the club on a deal that will run until the summer of 2023. Rooney, of course, stepped up to the lead of the coaching team of Derby County towards the end of November after former manager Philip Cuckoo parted company with the club earlier that month. He was supported, of course, by fellow coaches Liam Rossignol, Shay Given and Justin Walker, who will retain their position on Rooney's staff moving forward. And from the Championship of the Premier League and the awards, of course, of the Player of the Month and Manager of the Month, and no surprise to who won Player of the Month in the Premier League, it is Bruno Fernandes. For the fourth time he wins this awards. Only 5 players this season has only 5 more players in the Premier League history have more Player of the Month awards than him: Aguero, Gerrard, Kane, Van Persie and Wayne Rooney. Fernandes scoring 3 goals in 6 months in 6 Premier League appearances in December, as Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's side went unbeaten, winning 4 games and drawing twice. And the Manager of the Month, of course, was taken by Dean Smith, Aston Villa's head coach, beating Everton's Carlo Ancelotti, Burnley's Sean Dyche and Man United's Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to win the accolade after masterminding a 5-game unbeaten run. Smith and his backroom team, of course, oversaw 3 victories and 2 draws for the club, ending 2020 in the 5th place. And into the unbeaten run, Smith's side scored 8 goals and conceded only once during the month, keeping a league high 4 clean sheets. A back-to-back victories against Crystal Palace and West Bromwich with a 3-0 result helped catapult the team up the table. Smith's win makes him become just the 4th Villa manager to claim the award, following the footsteps of Brian Little in January 95, John Gregory in September 98, September 2001, Martin O'Neill in April 2007, November 2008, December 2008 and April 2010. Still in England, and we're moving to Tottenham, of course, and some transfer talk, as the club is unlikely to extend Gareth Bale's loan for a second season. It could be set for return to Real Madrid as soon as the end of the season, and Tottenham look to be not considering the move for the striker. The Welshman completed a return, of course, to North London in September, but has struggled to maintain a consistent level of fitness. Well, this is not new. It has been a while since he was fit and consistent. Played only 161 minutes of Premier League football since his return. Tottenham really reluctant to extend his stay at the club. According to the Times, they have no plans whatsoever to offer a new loan for him after a series of injuries preventing him from reaching the potential. Bale's inconsistent fitness has stopped him from recreating his Real Madrid form in the early days of his Los Blancos career. Upon his arrival, of course, Bale was ruled out for almost a month with any issue before eventually making his debut against West Ham after 72 minutes. But, however, he showed a glimpse of form when he scored his first goal back on November 1st against Brighton. Then he failed to continue on such form, scoring just 2 goals against Lask in the Europa League and against the Potters in the Carabao Cup. Bale is currently, of course, nursing another injury as well, which means that the struggle is going to be continued. Jose Mourinho is pleased with his character and attitude, he says, but certainly not pleased with his performances on the pitch this season. And moving on to Italy now, Antonio Conte, I'm going to be talking about that in a little bit later with a bit more focus now, as he's, ahead of the Juventus match on Sunday. The hashtag Conte out is trending momentum online, and the question is being asked: is the former Chelsea manager boss really able to cut it at the top anymore? The chances have been missed to close the gap on rivals AC Milan probably twice at the top of the table, and the last two matches they have dropped 5 points, of course, inexplicably losing at mid-table Sampdoria before throwing away a lead late against Roma. To make the matters worse, Juventus have capitalised on the situation, closing in on Milan and Inter at the top of the table. This, of course, piles more pressure on Conte as he prepares to face his former side in Derby d'Italia against Juve on Sunday evening. The main accusations made against Conte, of course, are the negative approach, throwing away precious points. Clearly, the defensive or the ultra-defensive approach is something that is accused of. Many of the comebacks were a result of lack of ideas of that going forward, and a team that almost appears afraid of winning. In the last 20 and 30 minutes, they revert back to defending in a really weird way, dropping into their own half. It's evident, of course, in the draw against Roma as well, leading through the second half strike of Achraf Hakimi against Roma. Conte brought off Lautaro Martinez, replacing him with Ivan Perisic. Not the most attack-minded substitution, especially with Alexis Sanchez sitting on the bench. Then Arturo Vidal coming off, Hakimi coming off, making way for Gagliardini, and Alexander Kolarov, with the introduction of the former instead of the more technical duo of Christian Eriksen and Stefano Sensi. It's clear indication that Conte wanted to shut up shop, but certainly it backfired on him in that draw, of course. Some supporters, of course, are calling for his head, really, and, they seem to be the victims of his tactical obsession of the defending, and worryingly, he doesn't have, variation of the sole motto of his life, which is relying on Romelu Lukaku, who saved him again against Fiorentina in the Cup, of course, with the winner just 1 minute remaining in injury time of the extra time. From Italy, and we still in the Italian football, but we're talking Serie A now, as Lazio defeated Roma quickly 3-0, of course. You can see that this win was against the run of the game, pretty much, for Lazio. Lazio had a 100% efficiency when it comes to shots and shots on target. 11 shots, all were on target. That was the definition, I think, of the word clinical. The mistakes from Roma were really, really horrendous. 2 mistakes from Ibanez, giving away the first goals pretty much. Lazzari, being at the heart of it, pressuring Ibanez into mistakes for the first goal, with a wrong clearance from the Argentine defender, the Brazilian defender, resulting in Immobile finishing inside the box 1-0 for Lazio. And then, of course, 10 minutes later, Luis Alberto, similar situation as well. Players of Roma were halting, thinking that the referee would give a penalty or something, but the play went on, and Luis Alberto managed to score the second goal. And in the second half, of course, Roma went all out looking for an equaliser and returned to the game. But Luis Alberto brace on the day and scoring the third goal from assist from Jan Akpro, giving, of course, Lazio all-important 3 points, which get them to 7th with 31 points and gets them much closer to the top situation in Italy. This could be a return of sorts for Lazio into the top, and maybe with some other wins they would pick up some serious steam. Moving on into Germany as well, to Germany where Union Berlin shocked by Leverkusen and defeated them 1-0. It was also against the run of play, pretty much. This time, although Union Berlin do not have the same, accuracy percentage as Lazio, but they still managed to shut down Leverkusen for good and didn't allow them the spaces and the movement that they wanted to. It was Christian Tuchert with the 88th minute goal from the assist from Lenz to give Union Berlin a great victory over Bayer Leverkusen. Bayer Leverkusen now continuing to trip over themselves this season. 4 losses or 4 matches where they don't win, 3 losses and 1 draw. And this is, of course, the latest of setbacks of Peter Bosz, who certainly regressed this season from going undefeated all the way until Christmas to now being winless in 4. This is quite the transition in form. Union Berlin continuing to be the surprise package of the season in Germany, sitting 4th now with 28 points. 5 points behind Bayern Munich, 3 behind RB Leipzig, and 1 behind Bayer Leverkusen. This could be a great season for Union Berlin going forward. And finishing as well with another piece of news, of course, or a couple of pieces of news. Moving to France now, and Pochettino, of course, tested positive for COVID-19 just 2 weeks after being announced as the Spurs manager. He confirmed that he tested positive in an official club statement, and of course he will therefore respect the isolation and be subject to the appropriate health protocol, according to the assistants. Also the assistants Jesus Perez and Miguel D'Agostino will take over starting from tomorrow against Angers. Kolinda, Batilucara, Rafinha are also sidelined after testing positive, but the Parisians' brightest star Neymar and Kylian Mbappe are firing fit and ready to face the Ligue 1's second placed side. In Spain, and we close down this news with the elections of Barcelona will be held in January 24th, but that date is currently up in the air after the Catalan government extended the restrictions currently in place in the region until January, until April. With the government, of course, due to rule on the elections for the Catalan Parliament on Friday, which are slated February 14th, but likely to be postponed because of the restrictions as well, which is common sense pretty much, which suggests that Barcelona's selection of a new president should be delayed as well. However, Barca will have the final say, as the Catalan Minister of Health Alba Vergés revealed on Thursday. He said it's likely the Catalan elections are moved to May, and keeping some distance, Barca could move their elections to the middle of April. Even before Josep Maria Bartomeu resigned in April, Barca were due to hold an election for a new president in March. The problem with the January 24 date is safety of the voters, really, with the restrictions on movement making it difficult for all club members to make it to polling stations. Linking on, of course, from the subject, talking about Conte out and of course the struggle of Inter ahead of the game against Juventus, of course. We're going to be focusing a little bit more about this Juventus game. We're going to be talking just, more details, really, about, what this game would mean for Juventus and for Inter, of course, because we previewed pretty much everything else from the Premier League to, the other games in Serie A, of course, talking about Lazio Rome and also the Bundesliga and La Liga. If you want to check that out, go ahead and check it out here on the channel as well. It is, seriously an important game, of course, of epic proportions for Juve and Inter, of course, and I think for Inter more than Juventus, because Inter in the last couple of games, of course, they missed a great opportunity to join Milan at the top of the table, missing on a big chance to close out the gap, really, on AC Milan, who are seemingly a pretty comfortable position at the top of the table, but maybe it will depend on what is going to happen. This game, of course, and this fixture, in the last 5 fixtures, Inter have, been, unable to defeat Juventus. 4 losses on the bounce it was for Juventus. For Inter against Juventus, of course, there was a cup defeat in between. Also, a couple of league losses, with Juventus managing to beat Inter both home and away in last season. Of course, with the away game being played behind closed crowds, and in the early days of the pandemic. Now, what does this game mean for Conte? Obviously, Conte has been struggling. And not struggling in terms of results, because considering that Inter are now second on the table, it is not in terms of result where he's struggling. It's the fact that, you look at their record this season, it's 11 wins, 4 draws and 2 losses. They are 1 loss less than Milan. And, the 1 loss less than Milan. So it's probably, if that loss was a victory, there would have been literally on par with their local rivals. For Juventus, the start of the season was pretty unconvincing. It was, realistically speaking, it wasn't exactly the best of starts that you could dream for. And, the unconvincing nature of Juventus made everybody worried that they might lose their place in the competition. They might lose their place in competing for the Serie A title. With Pirlo still trying to learn his trade, and people were anxious whether he would adapt to such a big job and big title job, like being the head coach of Juventus, of course, not finding the best formula, trying to start with different formations. He's tried a 4-2-3-1, 3-5-2, he tried the 3-4-3, he tried the 4-4-2, and he seems to be settling now on a 4-4-2 finally. However, the injuries for the personnel, of course, with the likes of Dybala being missing as well. The likes of Weston McKennie is going to be not available for this game, so it will be pretty hard situation in terms of choosing the personnel for the midfield. But still, he has a plethora of options, probably enough for him to make up his lineup. Conte on the other side is unconvincing for other reasons, and although he has arguably the most, the most in-depth squad in the Serie A season. I mean, it really boggles your mind. Like, he has some serious, he has some serious depth in the squad. And although the depth mostly comes in the defensive aspects of things, like, where he has defensive midfielders or outright right backs or left backs, but certainly he has a deep squad that he can use to to rely on his 3-5-2 and to apply it to perfection. But certainly he has been criticised for being ultra defensive, relying a lot on just the same players, not relying on Eriksen. Certainly is a problem, because not relying on someone like Christian Eriksen always hinders you, and the lack of creativity in Inter is pretty clear at the moment, with their only style of play being relying on Lukaku up front, lobbing long balls to him, trying to play crosses with Achraf Hakimi and Ashley Young to him. The ultra-defensive aspect of his game is really, really shackling some creative players. Talk about also Christian Eriksen. Stefano Sensi, we mentioned him in the news when he said the Conte hashtag was training because he's not relying on players like him. Also, Stefano Sensi is also, in a big issue this season. When you look into the players' stats this season, how much they appeared, how much they started, Stefano Sensi made 10 appearances, but none of them were a start. None of them were a proper start of the season. Considering the appearances this season only started twice, and those starts were not exactly were not exactly league matches, if you ask me. In the league, he made only one start, and he made only one start, no goals, no assists, of course. He made one appearance in the cup. Players like him need to be considered and need to be introduced to the squad. But of course, the biggest problem always remained Christian Eriksen, really, and it always remained why he's not using him and why he's not introducing him enough to the pitch. Although he made 14 appearances since he joined Inter, of course. You look at his stats this season: 6 starts, which is low, which is pretty low for a player that you brought to be a creative spark, and for a player who's at the peak of his career. Really, this is really bad. From a technical point of view, this is going to be all about whether Juventus, whether Inter, of course, will decide finally to change the style of their game. Will they be offensive? Will they decide to, try and flip the script a little bit and try to be a little bit more adventurous, considering that, they've been too defensive for some points, almost to their detriment, and of course the latest result against the likes of Sampdoria and the draw against Roma late on showed exactly why being that defensive is not good for Inter. If anything, they should be, going a little bit more forward, since they have someone like Lukaku, they have Martinez, they have, some people like Sensi and Alexis Sanchez sitting on the bench. This is why probably Inter should be going more forward. They do not need to be that ultra defensive when they have the personnel enough to, change the style and become more attacking minded. On the other side, Pirlo, I think, is coming more to his senses now with the use of the players, the formation that he wants to use, the formula that he wants to use in terms of the personnel, particularly in the midfield. I mean, options are plenty on the midfield, even with McKennie injured. He still have the likes of Ramsey, Bentancur, Rabiot. He still can rely on Kulusevski, who's growing into the game a little bit more. And although the injuries to McKennie and Dybala, particularly McKennie, in my opinion, he's been too impressive this season for me. He's been so impressive. The way he comes into the box, really, the way he supports the attack, box to box. Some of the goals he scored. The goal against Barcelona, of course, will stand out. For me, also the way he supports the attack, he does both sides of the game really well. Kulusevski adding a little bit more of directness, of course, and probably old school number 10 in some sorts where he just needs to bully the space behind the attackers. He can work as a number 10. He can work as a fourth midfielder. The options are really there for Pirlo. To be flexible in terms of tactics, and he could easily, of course, outsmart Conte when it comes to to flexibility, because Conte is too stubborn. So answering probably that question in the thumbnail, probably yes, it will be Juve outsmarting Inter, and certainly Pirlo is able to do that because he's comparing to Conte, despite the experience difference of course between the two. I think Pirlo is pretty much learning the trade pretty quickly, and also is ready for new ideas and ready to be flexible and ready to manage the games according to what the opponent's plays like and according to the style of the opponents, while Conte is certainly not someone who can do that. Of course, he's too stubborn really, despite winning trophies and leagues in Italy and in England with Chelsea. His reputation as a stubborn manager, as a manager that doesn't want to change his style, probably hurt him in the top level. And we'll see, of course, on the night on Sunday whether he will be ready to change the tactics for once, or he will be too stubborn to do that. That's it for the episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching / listening. I was your boy, the HOD of the PSP. Follow me on social media. I'm at PSP on Twitter, page SitePod on Instagram. Like, share, comment on this video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Listen to the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you can get it from. And also on www.webreadsports.com. You can check out our content and what's going on in the channel, of course. And goodbye until the next episode. I was your boy, the HOD of the PSP. Stay safe, and I'll see you soon.